Hello? All right. So we are the ones that are standing in the way of you and lunch, so we're going to keep this interactive and conversational. I know many of you recently got your 2018 Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey results, and joining me here on the stage are some of the people who know best what to do with it. So before we get started, I want to give them a chance to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the perspective you're bringing to the conversation. Sometimes you're at the top, and this is an opportunity to celebrate. Sometimes you're at the bottom, and sometimes you're somewhere in the middle. And so maybe we can just kind of go down the row, and we can talk about what perspective are you bringing to the table, and I think that'll help folks think about the questions that you may have.
Good morning. My name is Derrick Allen. Good morning. My name is Derrick Allen, and I'm currently the Director of Human Resources for the Federal Election Commission. And we're currently a small agency, and some of the challenges that we had with the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey was we were ranked last. So today, I'm going to talk about some of the strategies that we undertook to move us forward.
See if this one works. It sounds like it does. Good morning. My name is Ira Kittmacher. I'm the Chief Human Capital Officer for the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. I've been in this position for the last 3 years or so. I was the Deputy Chico prior to that. Part of my perspective is going to come from a prior position I held with the FDIC, which was Manager of Culture Change. And so we had gone in 2005. At that time, there were only large agencies and small agencies, not medium-sized agencies. So we were ranked number 25 out of 30 large agencies. And by 2010, we had risen to number 3. By 2011, we had risen to number 1. And then from 2011 to 2016, we maintained that number 1 slot, although, as we know, the medium-sized agency category was created. So part of what I'll be talking about is how did we go from number 25 out of 30 to number 1? How did we sustain that for 6 years? Most recently, we were number 3, although our scores had actually gone up. And so that's what I'll be talking about.
Good morning. I'm Camille Hoover, and I'm the Executive Officer at NIDDK at NIH. And I also wear another hat, which is as the PMA CAP Goal Workforce for the 21st Century. I'm the co-chair of the Employee Performance and Engagement Subgroup. So
wow, that was impressive.
I know. And I didn't have my notes in front of me. So I also have that perspective that I'm sharing. I'm within HHS, so we're the second best, second to NASA, of course.
But who's keeping track?
That's right. But what I would say is I'm also here as a leader in the federal workforce that is constantly trying to make a difference and to make sure that our engagement activities are in the forefront of our minds day in and day out so that we create the culture we want for our employees and that we have a wonderful workforce. So that's what I'll be sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Jane Dada. I'm the Deputy Chico at NASA. And our perspective is that for the last handful of years, we have been the best places to work in government for the large agencies. Having said that, we are not sort of sitting still. And in my role as Deputy Chico, I feel like I have contributions to make to ensure that we are true to our culture and that we keep working on communications and other things that touch engagement in the survey. So never sit still.
Terrific, thank you. Derrick, I'm going to start where you started. So you're at the Federal Election Commission, which has not always had the best story to tell when it comes to employee engagement and the data. So can you tell us a little bit when you get those data, what have you done, how have you reacted, how has leadership been responsive to the changes that need to happen?
Okay, sure. So when I first arrived at the Federal Election Commission in 2015, we were ranked last. But since then, we have made a lot of strides, and we're moving forward. We're making a significant progress, but I'm not satisfied, and leadership isn't satisfied. But there are things that we did to move us forward. So one of the things that I did was I benchmarked with federal agencies, small federal agencies that were ranked at the top of the survey. they gave me information to look at certain survey results, focus on the positives, and move those forward. Another thing I did was I set out to build a team. I had to get everyone involved because at the Federal Election Commission, we have 3 Republican commissioners, 3 Democratic commissioners, and 8 senior leaders. So everybody has a different perspective. So you have to build a team and get everybody aboard and involved. After you build that team, some of the things that I did to build that team was I hired a program analyst in Dr. Hope. She's an organizational psychologist, and I see her in the audience. Thanks for coming out, Dr. Hope, and I appreciate her service to the Federal Election Commission. I also work with the EEO office as well to focus on diversity and inclusion because our numbers were very low in that, so we started to implement a training for senior managers on diversity and inclusion. And third, you have to be slow and methodical. It's not a race you can't win the race in 1 year. So every time you do look at the survey results, you should be looking 3 to 5 years out. So we're preparing not for next year's survey, but for 5 years out. So you want to be strategic in your thinking. So one of the things we did was, if you take a look at the data talks to you. In human resources, I have the workforce profiles, but I also have the FEVS survey results, and it says that it tells me who's taking the survey, what groups aren't taking the survey, and at the same time, I'm walking around, and it seems like everybody's really enjoying the place to work. There's certain program offices where people are enjoying work, they're enjoying the mission, but those folks aren't taking the survey. So some of the things that we did was reached out to them and did focus groups and went to the staff meetings and encouraged them to take the survey. And we also sent things forward, communicated throughout the process. Hey, X amount of people took the survey. Please take the survey. Got senior leadership involved as well. So we've made significant progress. We got some of the early results back, and our new IQ scores have gone up, as well as our workforce and our human capital engagement scores.
That's terrific.
Yes.
And I think you talk about a couple practices there that others can replicate. One being the benchmarking, going and seeing what other folks are doing, I think makes a huge difference. The second is looking at the response rate, making sure that folks are actually taking the survey, because the more people who take it, the more information that you have as an agency leader. And then the third is making sure that you're communicating what you're doing and letting folks know. I also think that idea of a long-term vision is really, really compelling. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ira, you're up. Tell us about FDIC. You are sort of a comeback kid of the rankings, so talk to us about that.
Okay. Actually, I think that listening to Derrick, I think we're going to hear some of the same themes. And I came to the conclusion a number of years ago that improving engagement is not rocket science. There's some basic things that we have to do. So again, in 2005, when we were number 25 out of 30, I don't know if anyone here has ever been to the FDIC, or we have a campus in Virginia Square in Arlington. We have buildings here in Washington. And we tend to have very nice facilities, a nice cafeteria. And prior to FDIC, I worked at Navy in a 1940s Quonset hut in the Bay Area in San Francisco. I've worked at Treasury. I've worked at OPM. So anyway, when you go into a place like FDIC, it's a very nice location. It looks more like banking offices. So where I'm going with that is we had a new chairman at that time. Her name was Sheila Baer. She had just come in. She had seen the facility. She had seen how nice everything was. Our compensation tends to be very good. And she couldn't understand why we were ranked so low and why there was such low engagement. So my first lesson learned was you need to have a burning platform. And to me, that means you have to have senior-most support. So it was that chairman who really was the primary advocate for employee engagement and for improvement. So that's one of my main takeaways is you have to have that constant presence of either the senior-most person or someone close to the top who takes these things seriously and who pushes it forward. We also did benchmarking, both with government agencies and with private sector companies. We visited Southwest Airlines, we visited Animal Planet and other places that are ranked very high engagement-wise. And from there, we built a strategic plan. Again, getting back to what Derrick said, looking ahead, having a vision. One of the more important things to me was embedding whatever change we made into the agency, because as we know, when political appointees come and go, some of these efforts can just sort of fizzle away, and I didn't want to have that happen. So we built what we were trying to do engagement-wise into our agency performance goals, into our performance evaluations for managers. Our managers are ranked on their support for employee engagement. We just did a whole spectrum of things. We focused a lot on leadership and messaging. We've done a lot in the way of town hall meetings, which probably many of you have, skip level meetings where the chairman meets with employees at all levels. We focused on the core values and really hammered home what they are. And really we were able to make strides based on, we've always been very strong with employees connecting with the mission of the agency, which is protecting the banking industry and the financial system of the U.S. And we were able to really hone in on that and build on that and build engagement upward.
Thank you. And I think, or one of the things you said is something I say about Best Places a lot, and I'm glad to hear that it happened, is that I think when folks can use a low score on the rankings as that burning platform to go to leaders to get attention, I think that's the best case scenario, where it's really an opportunity to get that attention, and then you can have the town halls and those conversations. I also think it was interesting how you added on from what Derrick was saying about the benchmarking, that you don't always have to look at other federal agencies, that sometimes the organizations that we're competing with are actually not inside the federal space, and looking at what are other places that folks are looking at for talent. Where are places that employees come from? At FDIC, you have a lot of people from the banking industry, those types of things. And so I think that's a really interesting practice that others can use as well. So moving down, Camille, you have a bit of a different kind of story. And I think your story is something, again, as we think about things folks can take and put in their toolbox from today's conversation, I would love for you to talk a little bit about NIH and the ART tool.
Sure. Terrific. Thank you. So as a senior executive leader at NIH, and for any of you that are leaders in your organizations, I think we all believe that it is so important that we are responsible for ensuring that we create a culture where our employees can flourish, where they have the tools and resources that they need to do their job, where creativity and innovation is rewarded, where the environment is respectful and inclusive, and also where there are standards and accountabilities. And as a senior leader, I regularly have a vision and core values, which are so important. But what's key is making sure they're not just lofty goals, but that they translate to the people on the front lines. When you're talking to the people on the front lines doing the work, that they believe that the culture that they're in is one that is healthy and positive. So EVS provides us with a treasure trove of information about our employees, what they think, where we're doing well, where we could improve. Unfortunately, OPM delivers that information to us in a way that every organization and every agency is trying to sift through and synthesize and decide what is important to them. And at NIDDK, we created an extraordinary tool, which we are calling EVS ART. And so to tell you a little bit about it, because we are here to gift it to whoever wants it. It's created by feds for feds. So with this tool, it's an Excel-based tool, very simple, and in 5 simple steps, in 5 minutes, you can actually create an entire report. So you will take their information, you plug it in, cut and paste. You're going to get 2 different years for any organization that has 10 or more participants. And in that 5 minutes, the report you get has a dashboards, it has a heat map, and then it has a deeper dive using the framework that OPM gives us on how your organization is doing. And I did bring copies of the report here today and brochures for whoever might be interested. So we have been out gifting it. I mean, what this tool does, what it's so masterful of, is it is the voice of the people. It brings the voice of the people to life, and it actually tells you a story So instead of spending weeks and months going through and trying to synthesize your data, you now, in 5 minutes, have a report where you can spend your time as a leader trying to develop actionable initiatives or interventions to move forward. So we have been gifting it across government. We've been going to many, many agencies, and I wanted to bring it here today.
Terrific, thank you. And maybe you can leave the brochures for folks so they can grab it as they come in and out. But
and one other point I forgot to mention, so this is how remarkable it is. So CDC, for instance, used to take 72 days to create 20 reports at a cost of about $32,000. Now they can do those 20 reports in 1 day. And because of that, they have increased the amount of reports they do sixfold and are creating 150 reports that now go to the deeper, another 126 levels of the organization. At NIH, one of the institutes went from 30 hours at a cost of $1,350 to 5 minutes at a cost of $3.75. So the last thing I actually would like to say is we've been on this gifting tour for the last 9 months since we created this grassroots effort. But what I'm on a crusade for now is to really get it into the hands of leaders. So we've been out to Chico's, we've met with engagement folks, and they are so important in supporting, but the leaders are the ones that have to do it. And it takes the leadership from the very top to really affect change, to make sure that you are focusing on engagement and taking care of your organization day in and day out throughout the year, not just in the fall when the EVS reports come out.
So that's exactly right. And I think one of the cool things about our system is that it helps you tell that story, right? So to get that leadership attention, as much, I love a good spreadsheet. I suspect others here might too, but not everybody does. And so you need to make that message really clear, and being able to have that kind of tool is really outstanding. So for folks who haven't seen it, I second the plug on that, and we'll make sure that there's information available. So last but certainly not least, Jane, so talk a little bit about NASA. So the question I get most frequently when Best Places comes out is what is it about NASA? You never want to be the one, I guess, though, as the Chief Human Capital Officer you're the one where the scores fall. But I will say that with NASA, you keep getting better. So tell us a little bit about what is it about NASA? What's the secret sauce?
Well, I first wanted to say to Ira, it is rocket science. I just couldn't let that one go.
I served that one up.
Yeah, that was it.
And I thank you for it. Yeah. We've really been delighted by the EVS results that we've gotten over the last handful of years. And standing back and looking at it, I think there are probably some key ingredients, if you will, to the secret sauce, some of which are just we're blessed with. So people love our mission. People who work at NASA just love to work at NASA because they love what we do. And we have had great programs and projects and missions for as long as we've been in existence, 60 years. This is our 60-year anniversary. And truly, people make it a lifetime aspiration to come to NASA, work at NASA. And so from the standpoint of loving what you do, why do I get up in the morning and go somewhere and do work? It's because they really love what we do. Another key ingredient, I think, is that we really do have authentic leaders who care about people and who care about the culture and who take steps, deliberate steps, to reinforce the aspects of the culture that matter. Examples are, they stand up at the senior leadership meetings and they talk about the survey and the survey results, and do videos that are available to the entire workforce about, well, what does the survey tell us? And what am I going to work on with my staff to make it better? It's not enough just to hand a script to a leader and say, read this and you're all good. You have to have role models in your leadership. And I know this is a theme that's come up from other panelists. And it is not just your senior leaders, although I think it really needs to start there. It's also about supervisors, because the supervisors are really kind of that's the connection between the work and the people, the most direct connection. And so really good supervisory practices also matter a great deal. And finally, I would say another key theme is connecting people with the work, but also with each other. So one of the things we've done over the last, decade or so is to really start using tools that help us do that. So virtual tools, which I know are quite common now, but when we first started using them, they really weren't. And we would do things like Ask Me Anything sessions, and those are sessions with sort of leaders of different functions, leaders of the agency, and the idea is that you could just sign in and then you could really ask anything. That sort of contributed to the leadership voice and also the authenticity. Like, you really can ask me anything, and I will tell you what's on my mind. So that was a really helpful step, I think, in our journey. So those are all the sort of the key ingredients. There are probably others, but those are the ones that stick out. I will say, though, that it would be easy for us to become complacent, and I don't think that's our intent. Every year when we get to the EVS, it's not so much about, oh, jolly good. It's, okay, so where do we need to be better? We do a leadership briefing every year to the administrator, the deputy administrator, to the to all of that sort of core leadership team. And one of the things that we show is the variation in the results for a lot of the key indices, so that we can see that, while it averages out to be a nice high score, when you actually look at the layers of onion underneath the surface, you see that it's actually, we have some work to do. And then you're sort of rolling that out and working with our field centers to sort of have them work with their organizations and picking maybe some themes at the agency level, but also inviting them to pick some key themes at each of the field center levels to work on. One thing that I found has worked for us, and it's an advice I would offer out, is don't try to boil the ocean. It's too hard. I mean, you could find a lot of stuff in the survey, and then you could end up having a laundry list of action items, and then it sort of dies under its own weight. So pick a few things that matter and work on them. So those are some
I think that's really helpful, and I think all of the things that you're talking about, Jane, really get to how do employees feel that their input is being heard and used. And there's that question 41 on the FAVS of, I believe my agency leadership is going to use the results of the survey. And what we have found is that one particular question means so much. It's such a proxy for trust. It's such a proxy for the communication of senior leadership. And it's an amazing predictor of response rate, that if employees don't feel that their voices are going to be used, they just stop taking the survey because it's not worth their time. Right. And so I think that all of the things that you're doing to really make sure that it's a meaningful action is huge. So we have about 5 minutes. I have some questions I'd love to ask this panel, but I want to make sure that you all get your questions answered. Is there a question from the audience that folks want to make sure that you have a chance to ask folks? Anybody? I've got some good ones. If not, okay.
Hi. So I know that, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I know that there was mention of the tool that's outside the reports, but how can we access the tool automated, or is it available automated? Because that's a good device. That's a great device.
Yeah, so if you get the brochures, it's on the max.gov site, and we have the tool. We have a video that takes you through it. My crew is ready to help and show it to you, help you learn it. I mean, it's very, very simple and very powerful.
Thank you all.
Sure. Oh, thank you. I saw there's another question. Yeah.
I'm really curious about NASA, because you seem to have a culture of, I want to get better. And every year you do get better. So my question is, what continues to drive that desire to get better over such an extended period of time? Administrators have come and gone, political appointees have come and gone. and yet NASA continues to get better. So could you give us some kind of an insight about why that happens?
Well, I wish I had a simple answer for you. However, I think it comes down to sort of, we all want to be A+ students, and the people who work at our agency are motivated by something that's well more than money and prestige. It really goes to the passion for the mission, I think. And when you're curious, because that's sort of, I'm pursuing some scientific question, right? Or I want to figure out how we can build something that we can send to the space station. I want to figure out how to do something better. It's sort of built in the culture of the projects that we do, the people we select, and the fact that we are really clear about, and the missions that we do are not missions to just sort of, they're not humdrum missions. The very essence of the work that we do is exploring things that have never been done before. And so you get people in the agency who are fundamentally curious, I think, and want to be innovative. And because of that, we apply that across the board. Interestingly enough, when I say people have passion for the mission, I am not just talking about scientists and engineers. I'm talking about the people who work in all aspects. People who work in human capital are completely committed to the mission. So that idea of innovating and being curious and wanting to make things better sort of flows through the agency in all corners. And I think it's just, if that's what you like, you go join NASA, right? I think it really comes down to some sort of self-selection and then reinforcement based upon the fact of the nature of the missions that we do. I don't know.
Well, and I think, Jane, there's something about what you were saying that I think is replicable to every single agency. Because I think one thing that has struck me as I talk to federal employees at really every agency there is people come to this work because they love the mission of their agency. Whether it's NASA or FEC or FDIC or NIH,
Yeah.
There is no opportunity to make a difference with the scale that you can do with the federal government. And that is really incredible. And so any opportunity to connect people to the mission of their agency and really show that connectivity and that line of sight between the work they do every day and the mission of the agency, I think, is a win for employee engagement.
I completely agree. And I think when we actually select people, we are looking for some curiosity in there, the real willingness to really look at things afresh and anew, regardless of the functional area that you're talking about. So that's something you can do anywhere.
Terrific. I think we have about 3 more minutes, and I want to be respectful about people's lunchtime. If in 1 or 2 words, if you all had advice to folks as they get their data, what would you tell people that you want to make sure they take away from this conversation? We can start with Derrick.
Yes, I would take a look at the data and view the FEVS survey as an opportunity for discussion.
I would start really at the top and make sure that either the head of the agency or someone close to that level is in full support for employee engagement. I would take the survey results seriously and focus on 2 or 3 specific areas, maybe those areas that you can improve upon, and really have people involved from the very bottom to the top and have a grassroots effort. We had councils and committees and just tying people into the effort and making them also feel some accountability and responsibility for it.
Terrific, thank you.
So I agree with everything that everyone up here is saying. I think what I would add is that in addition to getting the information out and making sure every level of the organization sees it, at NIDDK, we have a campaign every year, and we say, you spoke, we listened, this happened. And we do that throughout the year. So anytime we're introducing a new initiative or a new project or even a new process, we in part tie it back to how their voice and their input informed what we're going forward with. Because it's not something that you can just deal with once a year. To really change the culture or to sustain a high-functioning culture, you need to work hard day in and day out.
I think I just want to repeat what I said earlier. Pick the few things and make sure that they matter a lot, that they are sort of essential ingredients. and then do them well, and keep a pulse check on it through the year, because the survey is only once a year. And that really isn't enough to figure out how things are really going. So keep in touch with your employees and figure out whether what you're doing is working.
Terrific. Well, please join me in thanking this extraordinary panel.